They are all on their own. They can act without They have a
I don't know what
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order, if you wouldn't mind just listening up, and if you have a phone, if you would please turn it off, so we won't be interrupted when somebody's trying to speak. And then there's also, I would, one order of business. First of all, I want to thank everybody, because you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to come out on a night like this. Got grass to cut, things to do, but I appreciate it. And I live on 8th Street Road, and I imagine just about everybody in here does. Because we passed out 250 flyers on 8th Street Road from Lapel Avenue to Perkinsville.
Don, you need to speak up a little bit.
You can't hear that?
Not at all.
Let me turn down my hearing aid so it doesn't sound like I'm screaming. Okay, how's that? Can you hear it now? Okay, well, the first thing I'd like to do is introduce Ben Arcott. He is the Parks and Recreation
Madison County Parks Board.
Parks Board, okay. And President, he's the head dog. He's the president. And then we have Josh Miller. And is there anybody else with any more distinguished guests? And I would like to thank the Lions Club for giving us the opportunity to use this building for tonight. They do charge, and we have a basket. Hopefully we can pay for the room tonight. And it's a $200 meeting room. So if you can, I'd appreciate it. And if you can't, that's okay. We also would like to we'd like to do that sign-in sheet. I want to make sure that everybody has signed the attendance sheet. And then we have this sheet, which is our petition. And if you haven't signed it, please come up and sign it, or we'll pass one around. Okay?
Can we get one to take home with us, a petition sheet?
Absolutely. I have extras up there. And that's a good question. Thank you. I also have, I have those up here. So we would like to, first of all, tell you that I'm not going to be able, Josh's not going to be able, probably, to answer all of your questions. But before the next meeting, I'm going to take a minute, or take a list of the questions that were not answered, and I'm going to try to get an answer for you by the next meeting. Hopefully, it won't be for another month, but you never know under these circumstances. Whenever they call, we go. So that's where the situation is. This is the Perkinsville, from what I'm understanding. This proposed site is going to be from Perkinsville to Lapel Avenue. It's also my understanding that there are 4 options. It's either going to be north of the river, south of the river, East of the river or west? I know, that's all they told me, that's all I know. Well, that's, okay. East of Bay Street, west of Bay Street.
A point of clarity, what the board communicated was north of the river, south of the river, and then north of West State Street and south of West State Street. That's what the board communicated. Ben, would you agree with that?
Yes, that's very accurate.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just a clarification.
all right. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking. I'm going to spend a lot of time listening. But if we do have someone that wants to talk, please speak up. And let's be courteous enough to let them talk. It's easy to interrupt, but it's hard to talk, especially in a group this big. So if you have something to say, please say it. If it's redundant, like they did at the last meeting, then don't please whip a dead horse. Let's try to keep it alive and keep things on track. How's that? Okay, so is there anyone that wants like to ask a question, make a statement?
Can I make a point?
Go ahead.
So like Don said, I'm Josh Miller, and just for complete clarity here, this is not an official meeting. There's no official representation or board minutes or discussions being voted on here. This is just a gathering of concerned citizens for the area, which Don, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Jones, who's here. He's one of our leaders. But yeah, this is just meant to be an informational setting for those of us that were at the park board meeting. And for clarity, because some of the answers, some of the park board doesn't have some answers, so we may not either. Those of us have been to the meeting, but I'm very appreciative. Mr. Ben Orcutt took time out of his day to come and to listen and hear questions as well. So to speak to this group, I'm very excited that Ben came tonight, and we're very appreciative that he took time out of his day to be here. So, Ben, would you like to say anything now, or just kind of wait?
I'm here to listen. This is obviously has become a little bit of a contentious project, mostly due to what's being shared online and some details. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. I'm happy to hear any input back. I may not have every answer, obviously, to every question. Things are definitely, we are in the early design, not even design phases of this yet. This is in the planning exploration stage at this point, which is why we have so little concrete information. So, again, I'm here to listen. I'm not going to give a speech in any way. Anything I can cover.
Dan, I think you had a question.
How long is this money available to the park board to make this happen before it goes away?
In this initial project, we're using, the county commissioners have allocated ARPA funding to this, and that's ARPA funding that was from the federal government that the county's had for quite some time. They gave $4 million to the Parks Department to explore these ideas here and start building.
So it's not really Madison County, it's just the park department.
Madison County has much more money, much more ARPA money that is being spent a whole variety of ways. They have designated some of it to the Parks Department to start building, a new Parks Department. We've never had one in Madison County previous.
What's the acronym again?
ARPA, it's the COVID relief money that was given from the federal government to all municipalities and counties. So Madison County chose to use their money a whole bunch of different ways. This is one of them. To answer your question directly, all ARPA funds have to be extended by September of 2026.
Where can we find the proposed plan?
I'm sorry? On Madison County's website, Madison County undertook a variety of studies with that ARPA funds, and those variety of studies have initiated a variety of projects. Madison County's website, I'm not going to give you the exact URL, but if you get on the main Madison County website, there is an ARPA COVID funding page study, maybe a housing study, a parks and recreation study. They did a whole bunch of these, and the Parks Department was established as a result of that specific study. So all of those results are on the county website.
And if you signed in, sir, we can email that out to the group, just because, so me personally, I had a hard time navigating the county website. I don't spend a lot of time on it, so it was helpful that it was emailed out to me, and if you signed in on the sheet, we can make sure everybody that signs in on the sheet has a copy of that later. One point of order, so this side of the room's still empty. If we have people to just take a minute and shuffle and move seats if they need to, so if people can come in. And just introduce people to come in. I know Sheriff John Bean is trying to stay in the back, but we thank you, Sheriff Bean, for attending this meeting.
I'm Terry Ayers, I live on 8th Street. It might be helpful either to create a Facebook page or something that already is that you can list, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, and people can make comments about here's an additional question. Instead of you sending out emails all the time to the places to go to, that might help. We did that with the Edgewood Sewer a number of years ago. So just a suggestion, that worked really well for us. We opposed with it for this question. For those of you who remember that, you were probably involved in that too.
Okay, thank you, Terry. CJ?
Who started the petition, and is it a legal document?
I think we have an attorney in the room tonight that can speak to that. Ms. White?
It is a legal petition. It has all of the language on it that you would need to, have a petition in a court of law. Can you hear me okay? Here, hang on.
Come on, Maureen. Use your outside voice.
It is a legal petition. You do need to fill out each of the boxes on the petition. You have to give your name, your address, your phone number, and then sign and date it in order for your name to be counted. So if you feel like you can't do that, really signing it is nice, but it won't be one of the signatures that can be counted. Does that make sense?
And what good will the petition do? Is my understanding that have so many signatures?
So I don't think there's a requirement of how many signatures the petition needs, but one aspect from my conversations, and I've got these documents to pass out. I only got 25 of them, so maybe if you have the ability to take a picture with your phone and pass it on. But I talked to my county commissioner, Mr. Rick Gardner, about it, and I explained my concerns. And at that point in time, he didn't know anything about the I won't call it the contentious issue, but the conflicts that were arising with this. So with the petition, it could be, then that petition can be sent to our elected officials, because the park board's all appointed, but we could send that to our elected officials so they can have a clear communication of what the people want or don't want that live in this area. And I'll pass these out. So this has the park board's email on it, as well as the commissioners, and those can go around. And the only thing I would ask, and another point of order of this meeting, which I'm sure does not need to be brought up, but I refer to these as kindergarten rules. Be nice. At the end of the day, we're all neighbors. We may agree, we may disagree, but at the end of the day, we need to be nice. We need to be respectful. We need to communicate our message in a form that can be well received to our elected officials and our appointed officials.
I would also say, I know that there's a lot of people here. I don't know if Josh made enough copies for everyone. So if you are able to take a photograph of the page, instead of taking a copy of the page, I think that would be helpful to to those people that only handle paper, if you have someone that can just take a picture.
Josh,
Yes, sir.
clarify on the petition, what regulations are for qualifying to sign it for those who don't age.
Well, well, and I'll make my statement from what I've been communicating to, and the attorney can tell me if I'm accurate or not, but what I've been communicated to is 18 years of age and a Madison County resident. At least my thought and my vision, and Ms. White can correct me, but if you're not a resident of Madison County and you're not of legal voting age, then perhaps this wouldn't be a petition for you. Could you clarify that for us?
So, I mean, if you've read the petition, you can see at this point, the petition is basically just telling them that you don't want the trail where it is, right? So if it is someone that doesn't live in Madison County, it probably doesn't hold as much weight as a resident of Madison County that's signing it. I don't think you need to be along 8th Street or within this general, section that they've cordoned off in order to sign it. I think you could be any resident of Madison County to sign it. But I would say it probably doesn't hold as much weight if you're outside of Madison County. A petition like this is more so that the board will understand what the citizenry wants, right? And so if you were to have a lot of signatures on a petition like this and then take it in front of the park board, they could understand that maybe this isn't the place that they should be putting this trail, and maybe they should look at another place for the trail. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Hey, John. Thank you. Anybody?
Do we know how many households were affected in the designated area? So we have.
Ben, do you know?
How many households? No, I mean, that's sort of the whole point here, right? Like, if we go on, if the idea, if the trail turns out to be a more reasonable idea on the north side of the river, there will be fewer larger property owners. If it happens along 8th Street Road, obviously that would be many more individuals. So no, we don't have that answer at all.
I was just taking from that, I looked at their maps and kind of where they drew the lines and stuff, if we just did a house count.
For sure, yeah. I mean, if you were just talking from Rayville Avenue to Perkinsville along 8th Street Road, it's certainly a few hundred property owners.
Ben, do you know how many notices were sent out?
Notices for what?
There were notices sent out with regards to the property owners that I believe were in the potential area for the trail.
No, it's not. Nothing was accepted in our map.
It also mentioned it goes all the way to Stroll.
So that's kind of my question. My question is to Mr. Orcutt. Thank you for being here tonight. This is probably not a pleasant experience for you, so we very much appreciate it. I've seen a couple different things, and I read the plan, but I've seen a couple things that it's from Rayville to State Road 13. I've also seen that it is, the focus right now is from Layton to 600. Can you speak to, the phases that this would be done in?
Sure. So, I mean, largely speaking, our goal is to connect Madison County to Delaware County and Hamilton County, north and south, east and west. The goal is to have, recreational amenities that connect all of our communities, right? So, if we're speaking large scale, the idea of having a trail from Muncie to Indianapolis along the White River, huge sections of that have been done for years. So we're sort of one of the missing pieces in that larger network plan. And when I say network plan, the state of Indiana, Department of Natural Resources, has had what they call the Visionary Trail Network map for decades now. Indiana has some of the fastest growing bicycle and pedestrian trail networks in the country. And many, many people really utilize them very well. It's adding to health and wellness, economics, all types of things. So, on a large grand vision, as we talked about it initially, the idea of helping to connect from the east to the west side of our county is sort of the goal, generally speaking. Now, as a Madison County Parks Board who is using county ARPA funds for this initial project, we have been given the guidance, and we like the idea, of working specifically in the unincorporated parts of the county. The county doesn't want the county ARPA money to get spent really within any of the city limits for obvious reasons. Those cities got their own ARPA allocations. So in this point, what we're really looking at is Layton Road is the division between City of Anderson and the county. So that would be sort of the easternmost thing that we could deal with. And then the westernmost thing that we could deal with would be 13, County Line. So that's what is being studied right now, as that's all within our jurisdiction. We would love to see the City of Anderson expand their trail networks. I'm advocating for that, but I have no involvement with the city formally. I can't do that. So, does that answer the question?
Sort of, but it prompts another question. So, the Madison County Parks Board still technically has jurisdiction within the city of Anderson. You can do anything within a city. However, under this project, because of ARPA funds and the city of Anderson having their own ARPA funds, you are looking outside of city limits.
That is very accurate.
Thank you.
I have a question, Ben. Has any contract been awarded for the construction of the trail or the trailheads at this point?
No.
Okay, I'm just quoting from a blog post from Frost Brown Todd, one of the largest law firms in the country.
Sorry,
They put this Frost Brown Todd, they have an office downtown Indianapolis, they're one of the largest law firms in the country. And they sent out bulletins last year, all throughout the year, saying, passing a budget or an ARPA spending plan does not obligate funds. Instead, recipients, meaning Madison County, must enter into a contract by December 31st, 2024, or they will have to return that money to the treasury. Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, we signed the contract, the Madison County Parks Board signed a contract with the commissioners. It's the I don't want to get into, I guess I don't want to speak specifically because I don't know all of the laws, but basically the commissioners allocate where that money goes. And they gave a chunk of it to the Parks Department to spend. So we have not, I don't want to misspeak here, I hope I'm answering the question.
Well, no, because the question I'm asking is, do you have a contract? It has to be a contract with a scope of work and a budget and with a third party, not with the commissioners. It has to be, that's the definition according to Frost Brown and Todd, to be obligated, and if you're not obligated, it is subject to recoupment by the treasury. So I wish somebody from the county would call the treasury and find out if you get to keep this money before everybody does more work here on this. I don't understand.
My understanding is the lawyers that, I mean, this all went through many processes. There was an ARPA committee. There were many, many processes well before my involvement that shows where this money was going to go. And I guess I'll just say I'm assuming that the lawyers vetted that all properly in the sense that this money is being spent many different ways. And yeah, I'm not answering the question. I can't do that.
Okay.
If
I'd like to
there's a real
interrupt.
specific question, we can definitely get the lawyers to draft it.
That's my specific
The
question.
answer,
My
yeah.
specific question, do you have a contract with a budget, with a third party, with a scope of work for this trail? Because if you don't, I wish somebody from the county would call the treasury and find out if you have to return this money before you go spend it. But then we'll have to pay twice. That's the same point I made last week. I'm not against parks, I'm not against trails, I am against double taxation.
Question of the board?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, if this goes through, has anybody discussed anything with law enforcement or EMS as to how this is gonna be, this trail will even be banned? How, is it gonna be wide enough to get EMS down it if something happens on this trail? You know, my little bit of concern is, how's it gonna be funded after ARPA's all spent? Madison County doesn't have a flow of tax income that Hamilton County does, so how are we gonna pay for this?
Would you like to address that?
Well, I can only address from the standpoint of the sheriff's department, we've not been contacted or seen any type of plan of how this is, but that would be our concerns. We had an issue, an emergency out there, is getting vehicles out to that location. Is it gonna be wide enough for a car or a vehicle to get down there, an ambulance, and be able to stand having a car driven on it? Is it gonna be asphalt? Is it gonna be gravel? Are there gonna be wooden bridges and stuff to get the vehicles across? So those are some of our concerns. and I know this is all preliminary on the planning stages of this whole thing, so I'm sure they'll be addressed at some point in time, but at this point in time, our department has not been contacted about that part of the plan.
Let me interject one thing. If you haven't signed the petition and you want to, we'll have them available and they'll go around. We also have a check-in sheet that shows how many people have been here. I would like for everyone to sign that. It doesn't say you like it or you don't like the program. It just says you attended. That's all. Oh, no. Yeah, you could put your email list on there as well.
If you want more information, about what's happening going forward, I think it's probably a good idea on the sign-in sheet for you to put your contact information on there. That way, as information is provided, it can be sent out as a large email served list for you.
And can we take another break and just take another shift?
Shift
the
this
people
way.
going to that side of the
You can
room,
do it.
more people continue to pour in.
Can we open those doors? Maybe we can get it across.
Did you guys get these? And you can tell me if it's not accurate. In order for Madison County to build trails, if they're going across private property, they will either have to purchase that portion of your property. They'll have to do that through just an outright purchase or using an easement and give you money for the easement. And you've seen in numerous, at numerous meetings at the county council and at the park board where they've said, although they have the power to use eminent domain to take that portion of the property, they're not going to do that. So.
Is that gonna be in writing?
Josh actually asked if they would put that into writing. So right now, if all of you that have property in that area said no to them when they came to you with money, then they can't build it. Does that make sense?
I don't wanna throw water on that, but isn't there already an established easement on both sides of 8th Street? For the utilities?
There's already.
Gotta get along 8th Street, not along the road.
Well, I thought we were on 8th Street.
So I believe it is dependent on what type of easement that is as to whether they would be able to utilize it or not. For instance,
Can
if,
we add that to the list of questions?
yeah, if it is a
I'm
utility,
pretty sure, at least along 8th Street, I figured it wouldn't be on the list,
Sure.
but along 8th Street, I'm almost certain there's a utility easement on both sides of the road. Can they use that for this, and we have no say?
so is my understanding that, it's dependent on the utility easement.
See if we can find out.
Yeah, so for instance, if it's a utility easement for electrical transmission lines, it actually has to be set back so many feet from that type of easement, so the answer to that would be no. But if it's a sewer easement, or, I don't know what the easement is, a highway easement, I don't know, what the rules are. Correct.
Gas and electric.
Ben, can you talk to your, I know easements have been in your conversation.
Yeah, the idea that anybody would have land that would be used for this project without compensation is totally misinformation. Anybody who wants to engage with this project, who would be willing to sell or provide easement. I don't know all of the options, but there are many options. All of them include compensation. Nothing includes taking the property. So to that end, there are a variety of measures. Easements are a thing that exists. Yes, I don't know the specifics along 8th Street. Some we can use. Some of the drainage easements are actually already owned by Madison County, so that is one, not really in this area, but just generally speaking. So yes, the opportunity to sell a piece of property or get compensated for providing an easement for the trail to pass through your property, those are all options, but nobody is getting anything taken.
Okay.
So one point, just one point of clarity, Dan. So when the conversation came to me, it's not so much that they wouldn't be compensated for their ground, but it's just that they wouldn't want to sell for any amount of money because, I don't want to call people out, but I know there's a few people that spoke at your meeting that they moved there for that reason to get out of the city. So if you were to write them a check for $10,000 and then have their backyard opened up, that's not I don't want to speak for everybody. It wouldn't communicate to me that wouldn't be a reasonable form of compensation. There's not an amount of money that would offset their having their property encroached upon. So what it's not being communicated to me like that I ever released not to me to anybody worried about having their property taken with no compensation. It's just I'm worried about having their property taken for an amount of compensation that would not be worth it.
Okay, I have a question. We built a new pole barn, and if you put it at the top of the bank, we have a 30-foot driveway. That pole barn is going to have to go down. Is somebody going to pay us $40,000 that we just spent on that?
I hear what you're asking. I believe that the negotiation process for these types of purchases or easements are very negotiable. It's not a very specific number, and this is it, like, there's room for negotiation in terms of fences being built, in terms of landscaping, in terms of all of the things that you would want to help separate your home from any public infrastructure. Those are all options. So I don't want to say absolutely yes, because I can't say that, but also not no. You know what I mean? It's a negotiation. Yeah.
All right. Then I have on to that point. So what you're saying is that nobody will be required to sell even if for an amount of money. It would be totally up to the homeowners, their option to sell. Is that what you're saying? Or would there be compensation like, hey, we're going to give you, I don't know, $10,000 and you have to sell?
At this point, no, there's no way that I would be telling you you have to go through
That's why that's such an important question. If there's an easement in front of your property like on Main Street, and it allows for this, you'll have no say.
Instead of having the trail, buy a large section of land by the river, put in a new lawn, and then have like over the TV park, have trails in one area so it doesn't affect just the landowner who wanted to sell property, and we wouldn't have the trails, but we would have trails on a certain.
Yeah, I hear exactly what you're asking. Could it happen? Yes, absolutely. The idea that the Madison County Parks Department would eventually own a large swath of land that is a park, maybe sort of nature reserve style, maybe, or ball field, those types of things all exist within parks. That is not our focus. The Parks Department was really established with the goal of connectivity, which sort of lends itself to linear trails and paths within individual swaths of land, but it's certainly within the realm of possibility.
Sin going down basically with 1 year to work with. Is there anyone in here that's for the trail going the whole length?
No.
No. So with that in mind, does it concentrate on trying to find a large section of land that you want to sell and go that route?
Well, even the, down at Bundy's, where that line is at, expand that, put up a pavilion, put out picnic tables, stuff like that.
Thank you very much.
Encampments have taken over water trails in Anderson, and you should see the condition of those. I got lots of pictures, because I do have a group about water and Facebook stuff, so if you find me, Madison County Water Watch, and toxic taps, then I can show you everything going on with your county, including some of the people he's referring to, not saying eminent domain, but she did say at county council about some other projects. I got that on video, but that's for the discussion, and she's not here to defend herself. So carry on.
Has anybody come up with a number of how many homeless encampments you guys have to take down in Anderson along the bike trail? that possibly gonna spread out to our backyards and front yards?
Nicole, do you know? I know that you did some work with the homeless. Do you have any idea how many homeless encampments there were along the trail?
Oh, I have maps. They went all the way down to Rangeline Nation River. Ben did help get that, the one down by Dawson's Garage cleaned up. It cost about $100,000. And they had bottles of human excrement up to my waist. And no amount of Army training and biohazard chemical certifications could prepare me for what I walked into when we got it up. So,
You're gonna have to add more patrolmen to cover a bigger area along this trail, and now you're gonna be tackling helping some in the city possibly, and out in the county.
Well, we'd have to look at because we have officers assigned to sectors, and then, that trail, in theory, would cut across more than one sector, or all be in one. I don't know, I have to look at the map, but, you know, you've got so many officers there to respond to calls, whether it's one, but, you know, as far as adding officers, I don't know, it'd just be another aspect of their routine patrol that they'd have to be prepared to go down a trail for something, you know, the call boxes are there for police and things like that you see in other trails, in other cities and places like that. Like I said, we do have, you know, we'll voice that when the time's come, but when they make that, where's the sheriff's department's concerns and things that when and if it gets to that stage.
Thank you. One more question, and then I want to do a little presentation, and we'll have some more.
Then you said the ARPA funds that were directed to you for this project were $4 million, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, and how much has been spent already of that on the different projects, the planning? The planning and the one that is currently being done right now?
I don't have a hard number for you. Way less than, like, not even hundreds of thousands probably. The contract with the engineering firm has.
What engineering firm is that?
Perkinsville and Lapel.
Okay.
They're out of Indianapolis or Indy region. They have been involved in developing many other trails through central Indiana, so they're very expert in terms of the construction process and how the whole thing goes. So we're using a little bit different of a building technique or a design technique with this. I don't want to get into all it's sort of nuanced, but the point is we hired the engineering and contractor and not contractor. I want to say this. The engineers, the designers, the planners. We engaged them much earlier in the process than is typical for a government. Typically, you sort of design a whole thing out and then you bid it. And this is a POT, it's a little bit different. So we've engaged some of these parties really, really early in the process, which is why this feels like it's moving fast. But it is truly in the exploration phase at this point.
So the $4 million, well, it's less than $4 million now. That's the total amount you will have to build, to buy land, to build the.
And to be clear, we do not expect $4 million to do trail all the way through. That's why we're exploring the area to understand where it makes sense to spend this money specifically. So the idea of trailheads or river access points, canoe kayak launches, the idea of some incremental elements through this process, very likely, you know what I mean, very possible. The initial estimate that we saw, I mean, a lot of the big trail planners say it's $1 million a mile. That's land acquisition, design, construction, everything. And so to that end, the idea that we're going to do what we're talking about here with $4 million will never happen. I will say, as we started these dialogues, both the state of Indiana and the federal government have lots of funding available for these things. All of that is gone as of this year. So that honestly puts us in a really sticky spot where we had this initial funding to do the design to start a process that we fully expect the state of Indiana and the federal government to help get involved with, and to that end, we wouldn't be adding any taxes or doing anything of that nature. Those opportunities have dried up. Our governor and our president have taken this into play. So it is time to get creative. We may not get as much as we want out of this, but it's where we find ourselves.
And you only have until the end of this year.
September 2026.
And I was gonna declare that I'm against the project, but I guess I'm a major company with regard to that. When I first heard about the project, I said, we need to do whatever we need to do to stop this thing. I reviewed everything I could find online, their vision and progress, and I looked at it saying, it's their vision, which I think is nothing but a dream, because $4 million will not even get through the consulting and engineering phase of this thing. We have, all of you, well, most of you in this room probably own the river frontage. I grew up on lakes. We have a lake home, we have lakefront. In Florida, we have waterfront. I'm familiar with rivers in Florida. Using the rivers in Florida for canoeing, kayaking, boating is marvelous. White River is a nice river. We've kayaked it from Anderson all the way out past Perkinsville. And just having seen the river from that vantage point, I think the people that think that they should do this probably have never boated or kayaked up and down that river, because it's an engineering nightmare. One lady said that your barn is 30 feet above there. It's, and that's in my notes I have, that they're going to be from 2 foot to 30 foot high. They can't build, obviously at 30 feet, they can't excavate down to the river, so people are going to be 30 foot above the river. But the changes in elevation are going to be ridiculous. Nevertheless, I talked to Dr. Jones, who's my neighbor, and I said, I own the sign business since 1981. Mostly retired, but I still own the company and just do a few things in-house, mostly for myself and friends. I came up with a sign. This is in progress. This is the 20 by 24 inch sign, and it says clearly, stop the White River Greenway project, and then I put on the bottom, browse Anderson, Indiana, White River Greenway project. Because there's just a wealth of information if you just browse that. These signs are printed on very high quality chloroplast materials, the kind you typically use in parks, ballparks and so forth. So I don't know how long this nonsense is going to go on, but these signs are printed with a UV color fast ink, and these signs are extremely durable and not going to bend and break up like typical chloroplast. I don't have time. So I've had 48 of them in progress right now. We've got the stock print on both sides. We're waiting on the screen for the black image to go on there. They're available with the step stakes, and I'm making them available for nothing, for free of charge. So, I really would like them to get a reality check on what this is about. When I read it, it's like their vision. I was saying their vision is a dream, and it's our nightmare. The Riverway Trails, I originally grew up in Fort Wayne. When I got to be an adult, my wife and I left and bought a home up on a lake in northern Indiana. And then we had river and lake property down in Florida as well. We're exclusively water property. We own 15 properties, and all but 2 of them are commercial or waterfront. So I understand the value of waterfront. I don't think the planners comprehend what the value of the land is worth. Lakefront property is the value of that property is determined by the value per foot of your lake frontage. In northern Indiana, on a really small mud puddle lake, I'll call it, would start at $3,000, and it goes up to $15,000 a running foot. I've not done research on it. I will. I was on the consulting company also. We did a lot of property appraisals and so forth, so I'm familiar with the research. But to think that you could buy a foot of river frontage on the White River for less than $500 to $1,000 a foot, it's going to be at least that much. So if you take the footage in the scope of the project they're talking about, hundreds of millions of dollars just for land acquisition. They say that they want 35 feet of dirt, of earth. I don't know about you, my property stakes are out in the river. So if they're 15 feet out in the river and they need 35 feet of land, you're going to be buying 50 feet of property from me. We have 260 feet of river frontage. That is 3/10 of an acre, or a third of an acre of ground. Now you take what is the land worth around the river? What is the land worth in that part of the country? and whatever it amounts to, $100,000 an acre. Whatever your footage is, you're entitled to the acreage price plus that. We have a landing along the riverfront. Well, the landing is worth more than if you're 30 feet above to the riverfront. So all those factors take place. As a consulting company, we were involved in projects where the city or county or the government wanted to take over a person's business for eminent domain. One comes to mind down in Cincinnati, Ohio. These people from 1973 when they started their business. County came in and said, we want to take over your property, we want to put a police and fire station on there. And they came up with their offer and they sent it to me for my evaluation. So I did an appraisal based on how we appraised the property. And that went to court and my appraisal stood up and it cost the city of Cincinnati a little over $1 million extra. So what they think they'll offer you for your land is going to be a pittance. But your land is worth a lot of money, particularly on the river frontage. I find the irony that many of you have been on the river for a long time. I've been here 10 years. We have a lake home in northern Indiana. My daughter lived in Noblesville, so we bought this because it was to us as recreational property. We kayaked and do all the things we love. The water. So the irony is that now that we saw the value in the river 10 years ago, in my case, some of you might be 30 or 40 years ago saw it. 20, 30 years ago, the government was allowing corporations to drop chemical waste in the river. Okay, killed the fish, the wildlife. We still have huge, because I kayaked up and down the river. I didn't kayak up the river too much, but there's huge culverts for farmers' drain fields, which you know what that's doing to the water. I can't imagine the American Rescue Plan funds during COVID would have ever been envisioned. It's our tax money. Don't think the $4 million is yet. We've all paid that. That we would want that $4 million going to a bike trail. Somebody in this room wants a bike trail, but none of us do. Okay? It just doesn't make sense. American Rescue Plan, I'm just absolutely astonished when I come down here. I've had some major sicknesses the last 3 years, so we've hardly been out of surgery and health problems. But when I come down here and see the amount of brownfields, these are vacant businesses, vacant buildings. I go out Scatterfield, go along the west side of Anderson, go along the north side. The businesses are gone. It seems like $4 million invested in enticing businesses to come back into the community would be the right way to use an American Rescue Plan.
Steve, just so we stay on topic and other people have a chance, but.
That's fine. I got to say it, I'm done. But I have more pages than that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Steve.
Go ahead, sir, you want to speak?
Yeah, there's a lot of classified forest land down that river. There's 300 some acres behind me. Classified forests, what are you going to do with classified forests? They can't be built on or anything really done with them unless it's by the landowner, and he's very limited on what he can do with classified forests.
Okay, thank you.
Just one comment I want to make. Rachel Christensen works for HVAC Engineering, which has a contract to do update to our comp plan. Who also sits as vice president of the Parks Board. I don't understand how that works. One thing that we all need to pay attention to is that they don't try to designate our property as future parks land on the comp plan. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I have seen this happen in other communities. The parties fought a project, and the community and the government backed off, and then they updated the comp plan, and congratulations, the only use you have of your land is whatever that project is that you wanted to do. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I'm just saying the battle is not just the trail. People need to pay attention to the comp plan, because Rachel is heavily involved in both pieces, both the Parks Board Trail and the comp plan, and I do not want to see those streams crossed where your property is only designated for future use as parks, because that will devalue your property to where eminent domain will be considered. So pay attention to all of that.
So what's the comp plan? I don't know what that is.
So I just to be clear, I believe, and Ben, you can tell me if you know this, I believe that Rachel's firm is actually redoing the the UDO, the zoning ordinance. I don't believe that we're getting a new comprehensive plan right now. Yeah, it's okay. I don't believe that we're getting a new comprehensive plan right now. The last comprehensive plan for the county was done in 2021. It's typically 5 to 10 years before they do a new comp plan. I believe the one in 2021 cost between $200,000 and $300,000 to make. So, yeah, so I believe that her firm is redoing the UDO. She's correct, though. When they do redo the comp plan, that's going to be something that you are going to want to pay attention to with regards to land use. Typically, when a firm comes in to redo a comprehensive plan, they come in and they do a lot of surveys, ask a lot of questions. Sometimes they will hold public meetings in order to get information from the residents to see what you all want to do with the county. So just know that you will be able to give input into that comprehensive plan. That's typically what happens there. And I've not seen anything saying that they're ready to redo the county's comprehensive plan. I believe they're redoing the city's comprehensive plan. Is that correct, Ben? But I don't, who has that contract? I don't know. I don't know that.
I will say too, the comprehensive plan that was done to Madison County a couple of years ago is honestly a dominant force for why the county decided to establish the Parks Department in the first place. There were tons of surveys done, they were at the county fair, they do all of these different things. And one of the highest priorities ranked by citizens in Madison County is quality of life issues and recreation and health and wellness. And bicycle pedestrian infrastructure addresses all of those concerns. So there was nothing in the comprehensive plan that said, we want to see trail on 8th Street. But there was lots and lots and lots of support for public spaces, for parks and recreation in general. So those processes are where your voice can be heard. And I absolutely encourage everybody to engage in all of those processes. If you live within the city, get involved in the city's one. It needs a lot of work. I think the counties probably need some work too, but to the point of that is a great opportunity to engage, and that is also where a lot of the inspiration for this project came.
Okay, I would like to say one thing though. In conjunction with that, if you've ever lived on the river, and if you do live on the river, you take a picture today of one specific spot on the river, come back next year at the exact time, the same day, and take another picture, it'll be completely different. You know that, I've seen logs go down through there, whole tree, and wipe stuff out, it comes down. My point is, what are they gonna do when the log hits a trail? Log hits a bridge. Those are wooden bridges, they're not gonna build concrete bridges if they go on the riverside. That's my point, yes.
So we have wooded area on our land. What would that do with our hunters that we have?
That's a good question.
You didn't have an answer to that.
No, the hunting dialogue came up at our last public forum. That's a very important question, one that needs cleared up. I don't know the rules or laws about that myself. I know that that was something that we have on our list of questions to be answered to the public. I think it's important. I will say there are many, many trails around the country that have been developed in similar ways that go through, like, we're not the first ones to deal with this. So I'm sure that there's precedent, and we'll come to that.
Okay.
I was just curious, you know, this $4 million he's talking about, obviously doesn't cover repairs for half the trail's gonna be in the floodplain. So, I mean, how's that help?
The maintenance, that piece?
Yeah.
I got it right here.
I don't believe, and you can ask them, but I don't believe that they have an answer to that either.
Is the question generally about maintenance?
Yeah, maintenance, upkeep, and security, lighting, etc.
All of, yeah, I mean, all of those are very important concerns that I personally share. I ride my bike with my 9-year-old son. I'm not trying to take him places that are dangerous or do these types of things. So all of those things will be considered. I will say trails and parks in general are very often intentionally built in floodplains. I'm not saying that's perfectly appropriate for your backyards. It probably isn't. But the idea that trails very often exist in these boundary areas between moving bodies of water and more formal development, houses, businesses, towns, etc. So the idea that we can actually build some buffer into these, all the tree dialogues, natural spaces, there's very specific rules required for any, I don't know the exact ratio, but for any tree that comes down, there's got to be a few new ones put in. There's wetland remediation that has to be done with any type of wetlands that get touched. There's very specific procedures to follow on these things, and all of them are being considered. We do not have all of those things answered yet, absolutely not, but they're all being considered.
Ben, just a point of clarity, if I heard you right, so there was copious amounts of buy-in from Madison County that once the park trail system, is that, did I hear you correctly there? Okay, so what my research says off of your plan on page 63, it says there were 17 people at the 4-H fair, 50 people at the birthday bicentennial bonanza, 17 people at the Heritage Fair, and 63 people from a Google survey form with no time specified.
That's the parks plan specific, or that's
That's figure 44, summary of engagement reach on page 63.
So that's the park specific plan, and yes, the company that ran that specific park study and that engagement, it is severely limited by the knowledge. The comprehensive plan process, which is separate from that study, had a much wider reach, much larger dialogue. So that was when we started engaging with people specifically about what do you want to see in charts, which was well after the dialogue about the whole comprehensive plan. I wasn't really a part of the comprehensive plan process. I'm just aware of it.
If you are interested in Madison County's comprehensive plan, you can find it if you go to the Madison County government's website. I think it's in the planning tab. I can find a copy of the entirety of the comprehensive plan.
So we are nearing closer to our mark is kind of what we earmark. So one final question for you, Ben, for me, and then we can start wrapping up. So with Google Forms and the surveys, and I think an individual brought it up and neither none of us were surveyed, what's an acceptable form of communication that we can clearly communicate to the board we're not interested in our life?
I would say email is the most effective form, just in the sense that it gets digitally saved, you know what I mean, like there's not the record of it, so that would probably be the simplest. I don't have, we don't have, there's no phone number.
Sure. Well, I guess to speak clearly, so do we need to, we'll have these meetings, we'll go to park board meetings, like, what's a number that's gonna be where the parks department board would sit down and say, all right, listen, we missed the mark with this, we want to change it. What do we get?
He's asking you how many signatures you need on this petition.
I hear what you're asking. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're here for the dialogue. I'm not here to say that this trail absolutely has to happen. It was sort of, it checked a lot of boxes as we started looking at a lot of the opportunities that exist around the town. Obviously, there are barriers. Obviously, many of those barriers are important and valid and reasonable, and that's why we're doing this study, so that we can say very concretely, hey, this actually feels pretty reasonable, let's go for it, or there are obvious reasons to not make this happen, let's stop. You know, that we're in the exploratory phase.
Yes, if we take a vote to stop this completely,
You can take a vote, it won't mean anything.
we can't stop it.
Not by taking a vote.
What can stop it?
I think possible, plus, but I will speak to Ms. Warwick, who is once again very kind to take time out of his day to come and talk to us. But also, I think to attend the meetings and voice concerns. I think that's, would you agree with Warwick? Yeah, attend the meetings, voice concern, and then, once again, with your elected officials, with your commissioners or your trustees, what have you, make sure you communicate that to them in written form, specifically the commissioners, because they, while they don't have authority on the park board, I would say they're influential. Would that be accurate, Ben?
That's accurate. I mean, yeah, the parks board is appointed, viewed by the commissioners, viewed by the council, and I believe one from the survey.
But then aren't you supposed to take a vote eventually on this program?
We would certainly take a vote to expend money to start buying property or something like that, yeah. We would have to.
But the commissioners have to.
Yeah, I believe, don't quote me directly on this, because I'm still learning some of these things too. But yes, I believe the decisions that we would make have to go to the commissioners for a formal ratification.
And that's an open forum, correct?
Certainly, that's
Can I ask a question? Why were none of us homeowners notified that this was even on the table to do?
If it got to the point where we have a line on a map that begins to intersect properties, every single person would absolutely be engaged. We haven't gotten to that point yet. So because we're still studying, it feels, I mean, arguably, we could have sent a message to every property owner within a half-mile north and south of the river. Like, we could have sent out thousands and thousands of notifications, but the vast majority of those would be going to people that would end up not being affected by it whatsoever. Because we don't know where it's going to be yet, so we can study. So at the moment that we say, hey, we really like the idea of the trail along, I'm just making an example. We really love the idea of it being along the south side of 8th Street Road. Fine. Okay, at that point, absolutely every property owner would get engaged with, and all of those dialogues would happen. Because there is no line on a map yet, there haven't been those notices sent out.
Okay. What is the timeline for all these studies to be completed so that we can look over?
I am hoping that we have this information to be having these dialogues in July.
Do you have any property along this proposed railway?
No, I live.
Okay, so it doesn't affect you directly whatsoever?
Well, it affects me directly as well. To answer your question, I do not know any property.
Okay. That's all I'm asking.
Over here.
Is there a reason why Christensen's the only one that has a conflict of interest filed with the state? And why don't you have one filed since you own a bike shop? We're just curious.
To be clear, none of these funds could ever go to my shop.
No, but
That's
putting a
the
bunch of money in a
conflict of
bike trail that.
Well, my interest would be if I had a way to take income from this, which I don't.
We're gonna take one more question.
Yes, that's that.
Because we have to wrap this up by 7 o'clock, these gentlemen have to leave. If you want to stay, and we can still discuss it, that's strictly up to you. If you want to break at 7 o'clock when we do, that would be okay.
This is just a comment, but a lot of my early information came from our Jackson Township trustee, who up front said she was not part of the park board, but was able to give me a lot of information to kind of get some things rolling down on 8th Street between Layton Road and Hamilton Road. Just information.
Good, that's what your trustee's supposed to do.
Is there anybody else?
Where's your sign-in sheet?
I have them over here. Back here in the corner.
If you want to give your information so that you can get information, go over here and sign in.
Right here. Have you already started?
But how? The minute we move in there, they're gonna spot us on their radar.
Not if we jam it.
Aha! You're right!
Down scope.
Down scope! Radar about to be jammed.
Sir,
What is it?
Can I talk to you, please, sir?
Well,
I'm trying to hear, sir.
you don't need that private. We're right here. Now, what is it?
I'm trying to hear, sir.
Now, what is it?
I'm having trouble with the radar, sir.
What's wrong with it?
I've lost the bleeps, I've lost the sweeps, and I've lost the creeps.
The what? The what? And the what?
You know, the bleeps, the sweeps, and the creeps.
That's not all he's lost.
Sir, the radar, sir. It appears to be jammed.
Jammed. Raspberry. There's only one man who would dare give me the raspberry. Lone Star!